Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. The chaos of Rostermania is still ongoing and the pros are starting up their practice again later on today. That means that OpTic Texas are running out of time to make a serious move. Will they possibly be forced to run it back again with Dashy and iLLeY? Or are we living in some crazy parallel universe where OpTic Crimsix is the man to save the green wall? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Thank you all so much as well for 90,000 subs. Hit that crazy milestone yesterday. I did not expect to be getting to that number by the end of this year, so absolutely fantastic stuff. Let's keep on going into the new year. We are on the home stretch, baby, to the big one. Let's dive into things. Drazah talking about OpTic beans here, so further indications that's not happening, but they've got to do something surely. Now, quick note as well on where Major 4 is going to be. We saw a couple of weeks ago now that Major 4 in New York is going to be cancelled in New York, and for various reasons, New York subliners have decided we can't afford to host it, or whatever the reasons are. Not going to happen any longer. That means the COD League's got to do something. They can't just cancel Major 4, although I wouldn't exactly put it past them. So they've got to find some venue. Either the seed will have to do it themselves, like they did in Raleigh and like they do for the World Championship, or they've got to find another host. Now, of course, look, I'd love it to be in London, obviously. Standy seems to agree. CDL London, he wants to see it, never been there before. So, I mean, look, we also know that Florida was a consideration, and then they apparently have pulled out of doing so because, I mean, look, right now, current economic conditions, costly for the teams, understandable they don't necessarily want to kind of put their hat in the ring to host it, especially organizations like Florida that never want to spend that much money in the first place. Now, I mean, look, Standy's getting a bit optimistic here with Tokyo. I kind of doubt that's going to be happening, but still, someone's got to host it, you would imagine. Now, Parasite, of course, he lives over in LA, right, and he says Major 4 should be a neutral event held in Anaheim, and Benjen seems like, well, it'd be nice, maybe, even though not for European fans, because the time difference is always a frustrating one, but, you know, as he says, like, you can't really book that convention center less than a year out. So that is maybe the difficulty that the CDL will find themselves in terms of finding if no teams want to do it, then they've got to do something else. There are some cities that I think would be nice to see, but whether they'll happen, who knows, and no update on that as of yet. We'll keep you guys updated, of course, with what happens going forwards. Let's talk Rostermania then. Quick note here on the challenger side. Hamza is gone from John's team with Fellow and Geo. Now it's going to be Morks stepping into that team instead, and let's talk about the OpTic stuff then, right? So Octane was talking about Beans, and he was saying, oh yeah, there's no way there's ever been any misinformation on the internet about Rostermania and the fact that probably this isn't going to be going through. But OpTic probably have to do something, right? Yes, Beans might not be the option, but, you know, if they don't get Beans, who do they actually get? Okay, there's a few targets out there, but we sit here now on, what, the 28th of December. It is believed that today is the day where the teams are starting their practice again. So it's January the 13th where the matches start for Major 2, and if OpTic, I mean, look, at the start of the season, OpTic are under practice. They took some time to get into it, not exactly sure what was happening. There was some illness going around. I think Scump took a bit of time to get into the groove of things. I don't even think Scump really played the game for the first week or so. So OpTic were already on the back foot a bit in terms of practice. It seemed to affect them to a certain extent that other teams were just straight up better prepared at the start of the season than OpTic were. And can they really afford, again, going into Major 2 to be under practiced? Probably not, right? Because, look, already they're looking not particularly good in the CDL standings. They've got to put some points on the board up at some points. And their Major 2 qualifier run is very challenging with the opposition they will be facing there. So they can't really afford to have a slow start to the Major 2 qualifiers, unless, of course, they happen to build the 4-man roster that they absolutely want. And that is far from guaranteed to be the case. So, look, Beans, probably not going to happen. The guy's disgusting, but whether Boston would even let him go, based on what we've seen the last couple of days, seems unlikely to happen. Now, you know, what will they actually do, though? Because Dashy is not looking like, as it stands, he's going to go back to the team. It seems clear that Dashy was indeed dropped from the roster. He was talking on stream about being jobless. He was, you know, but also, right, where does he go? Because if OpTic are the ones making a move, we know that London, we think, are making a move minus PaulX plus Scraps. But, you know, if LAG aren't making that many changes, if obviously Seattle aren't doing the pred thing, then does Dashy or iLLeY have anywhere to go if they make a change here, OpTic? Like, it's very much unclear on that front as well. And obviously, we know that Dashy was, you know, potentially getting dropped. He's made the tweets over the last few days to that effect. Like, we can even see these are his likes, right, over the last few days. He liked this tweet from Nanos about joining the dark side. He liked this one from Formal basically saying goodbye. Liked this tweet from Sleazel, and it's still liked on his account, where he says, you know, wherever Dashy goes, that's the team I'm rooting for. And then, of course, also, it's still, you know, he doesn't have OpTic in his bio, doesn't have OpTic in his name any longer. So, you know, there's some good reasons to believe here that he was indeed gone. Now, whether they say, Dashy, sorry, like, can we go back again? Let's just run it back one more time. I don't know what Dashy would say to that opportunity, especially because it's short surely only a matter of time until something happens regardless. But if indeed they wanted Arcitys, couldn't happen. Maybe they wanted Cellium, couldn't happen. They wanted Pred, couldn't happen. And now they're really strapped for options as it stands. Then what are they doing behind the scenes? Because as I say, there's been nothing really that's happened on this the last few days. Is there going to be anything that happens in the coming days? Will they be forced to run it back again? Or is the radio silence from the OpTic camp over the last couple of days a good sign, right? Because the last few things that have happened with OpTic, even the iLLeY thing in the summer and, you know, what happened there with iLLeY and Dashy back in August, right, when they were making those changes, everything was very much telegraphed, right? The OpTic Envy merger was telegraphed massively. All the changes from the OpTic camp recently have been rumoured and leaked earlier on, and it seems like there's some sort of rat in that camp, or, you know, those rumours are coming from somewhere. The last few days, those have been snuffed out entirely. So there's one of two possibilities. Either OpTic are just running it back and saying, you know what, guys, whatever, let's just give it a go again, the last hurrah, and that probably will be a disaster if they do it, to be perfectly honest, especially if they don't play well at Major 2. They've got to do something then. Or indeed, they are following through with the change, which it feels like they should do, just because what we've seen there from Dashy, like everything the last few days, it seems like he is gone, but if they can't find an appropriate and suitable replacement, and maybe they have found one, it's just that they're keeping it quiet now, right? Maybe they found the leak in the camp or whatever, and therefore we're not getting any of this stuff coming out publicly, but maybe they're talking to Gunless, maybe they're talking to whoever, and they are actually moving quite swiftly behind the scenes to get something done before and going into the new year, but we aren't hearing about it right now because maybe they've plugged the leak to that extent. Now, I don't think OpTic have been like 200 IQ here, because I know some people would say, oh, you know, they just let this leaks happen and they're actually just running it back just so they can expose whoever's leaking information from their camp. I don't think they're, you know, playing 4D chess like that, but, you know, to a certain extent, lots of things from the OpTic have been leaked over the last several months here, and they might have finally found a way to shut that down. Now, Ronnie says that from what he's heard, yes, indeed, you know, OpTic Beans is not going to be a thing. Now, this is a joke post anyway, right? So Ronnie kind of got trolled a bit here, but nonetheless, his indication is that OpTic Beans is not going to be a thing. But, you know, I know people were joking, oh, Ronnie says OpTic Beans isn't happening, therefore it's going to happen. But, you know, welcome Beans to OpTic and all this type of stuff. But, you know, I doubt it's going to be the case, is my opinion. I'd love to see it happen, but it probably won't. Now, let's talk Crimsix, right? Because this has been the big talking point of the last few days. If they can't get any of the players they want from the Pro League, what about bringing back some old legends of the scene? What about Karma? What about Formal? What about Crimsix, right? Now, first of all, the Crimsix relationship with Rambo is basically non-existent, is absolutely tragic. There would have to be, like, it would have to be an absolute disaster within that OpTic camp for Crim and the guys to kind of come together to such a point where they can actually run it back again, because Crim and Rambo don't get on. Crim and Shotzzy as well. I don't know what the relationship is there necessarily, but just because Shotzzy and Rambo were a key part of not bringing Crimsix onto OpTic Texas in the first place, there was a talking point when they merged that, okay, we're going to have Scump from the OpTic Chicago team, there's going to be Shotzzy and iLLeY from the Dallas Empire team, and then there was a question, do they bring Crimsix also from Dallas, or do they bring Dashy from OpTic Chicago? They did the latter largely because Shotzzy and Rambo weren't at all happy, maybe iLLeY as well, with the way Crimsix was treating them and how he was as a teammate during the Cold War season. So there's a lot of dirty laundry to be dealt with there if, you know, anything like this was to occur. But Crim says, nonetheless, yeah, I'm thinking I'm back after a much needed break. Then he says the following tweet, 7.5 hours per day of streaming since retirement. And I just thought it interesting because he puts the retirement here in the quotations, kind of implying that, oh yeah, he retired, but, you know, hasn't really been retired. So maybe what he's saying is that he's still been working hard since retiring from competitive play, or maybe he's saying that, like, the retirement actually isn't such a significant retirement, because then he goes on to say this, right? He drops the contract gif. Now, this, of course, is always going to cause a stir with Crimsix signing some sort of deal. This could be anything. Now, we know he hasn't been on an organization, right? So maybe Crim is just signing to an organization as a content creator. That is the most likely possibility, you would imagine, unless there's something else happening, because who knows if anyone reached out to Crim and said, hey, we want you to make the return, because we know that Scump was actually quite, I think based on what he said in one of the roundtables they did, he was actually quite willing to run it back with Crimsix going into Vanguard, but as it turned out, the team, Rambo, Shotzzy, didn't want it to happen based on their experience, therefore it was basically vetoed and they went the Dashy route instead. But given it's now Scump's last year, you would imagine he basically makes the calls at this point, even though you could argue that Shotzzy makes the calls on that team now. But, you know, look, if Scump came out to the team and said, hey guys, I really want to play with Crim, I feel like it's going to work, I feel like he's the type of personality they need, and Crim is one of those guys that has so many, like, facets of his character that OpTic really do need, ability to win, ability to get over the line, like, you know, discipline in that sense. There's a few things that OpTic I think have lacked lately that the likes of Crimsix would be able to implement, and did implement back in the day, right, on the OpTic Dynasty to great effect. And nowadays, I think OpTic are quite significantly lacking, and since Formula's gone, since Crimsix has gone, on, I think that some elements that made that OpTic team successful in the past have frankly disappeared. Now, look, Crim hasn't even played this game, right? This guy's been grinding out Warzone. Asking him to step back into a professional environment on short notice for Major 2 on, like, the biggest branded team in the game is quite the step. And I don't think Crimsix would even want to do that in the first place, but nonetheless, Crim was there during the dominant period when OpTic had the Dynasty. He was there in the Complexity Dynasty previously. This guy is the winningest player in Call of Duty history for a reason, and who knows, if Scump said, look, I really want Crim, we've got to make it happen, then maybe there's some world in which it occurs. I doubt it. I think there's probably something else going on here, but what is the more likely possibility? Are they going to run it back with Dashy and iLLeY? Are they going to get someone else in? If that's a Karma, if that's a Crim, like, that's got to be a less than 1% likelihood, but look, I've still got to throw it out there just based on what was going on last night, especially because the rotation did also going on to say here, you know, something's going on, and they seem to know what's happening there, especially from the challenger side, so maybe that implies that there's some sort of challengers relations there to OpTic, but I'm sure it will all become clear over the coming days what they are planning to do. But yeah, what other options are there out there? I've seen some discussions about, you know, General Pristini, but also the likes of Gunless, right? Whether if all the other possibilities fail, then getting Gunless in is the way to go, because, I mean, look, if they do run it back with Dashy and iLLeY again, like, you know, the chemistry there is surely going to be an absolute disaster, and there's no way that team lasts to the end of the season. So it's either like, look, we just run it back for Major 2 and just chalk it up, or they try something now, which they might have to. But if they don't try anything now, then scrims start again basically today. The other teams are getting practice. They're getting, you know, further ahead of OpTic as it stands. So, you know, it's a bit of a tricky one for them to figure out. And the fact that they couldn't get those R-season pred deals done before Christmas is now putting them a bit of a predicament going into the new year. So very much interested to your thoughts in the comment section below. Just to finish out with a couple of things. Firstly, this one, the Cellium index, which we saw a lot during Vanguard, to great effect, and Cellium was once again topping it. And, well, here we are. Quite a simple index here. Basically what it says is, you know, how many percentage of series do you go positive in? So Cellium's gone positive in 90% of his series, so has Scrappy. Then you get Afro, and this to me is the most impressive one, to be honest. Out of all the series he's played on the SMG, largely, he's at 89% going positive in series. Very impressive stuff, just because you'd expect ARs to be here, Skies, Methods, you know, even Brack from Florida. This is pretty much expected. But when you've got the likes of Afro and Pred and Hydra and Sid, maybe to a lesser extent, but even Scump as well on this list, that is some very impressive stuff. So Afro to me is the most impressive stat here, but nonetheless, given all the series that Pred has played and Hydra has played, it's maybe even more so impressive for some of these guys that they're also on a very high percentage of going positive, whereas, you know, Cellium at this point is an absolute expectation, but even Scrappy being here in his first couple of matches is nonetheless an impressive feat as well. But very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.